My mum used to have a really good saying, don't let school get in the way of your education. I wanted to challenge the paradigm that thinking was you can only succeed if you went to university. Would you like a job? And that was the Friday, and on Monday I started as a postie. I've just learnt the skill as I've gone. A house is just a structure. It's the people that make it a home. It's not called houselessness, which is essentially what it is. Someone doesn't have a house. It's actually someone doesn't have a home. We've kept building the same way for so long. You can't expect it to do different unless that changes. Women only make up 3.5% of the trades base. So 96.5% are male. There's a lot of work to do in construction to attract women, but also to maintain women. What I learned is best to...
Before we get started, please subscribe so that you never miss an episode of our cutting-edge contemporary conversations. Thank you.
Welcome, Tiffany. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Doing very well. Thank you for your time today, and thank you for saying yes to be involved with the International Women's Day. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I would like to get your story in terms of, how have you grown up and your background and your story in terms of you landing into the construction sector, and how has those mindsets and those ideas evolved in terms of your purpose and values?
Yeah, wow, that's a really big question to kick us off. So, and basically the history of my life and why I've landed where I am. I think, so I've always grown up in Perth. I've been very, very lucky to live here the majority of my life, and came from a really good home with 3 brothers, sisters, and really good schooling. But I felt that I didn't want to go to university, that I'm a kinesthetic learner. I want to learn by doing. And so I really challenged sort of the mainstream where I should go versus to where I want to go. And what did that mean for me, and what would success look like? And so I wasn't really sure. So I just it was a leap of faith, and I wanted to challenge myself in a way that wasn't academic. It was more about life. And my mum used to have a really good saying is, don't let school get in the way of your education, which was really about embracing all the experiences to teach you things that you can't learn from a book. And I really do appreciate all my other siblings went to academia, have got degrees. I'm the only one that doesn't. But I wanted to challenge the paradigm that you can only, the thinking was you can only succeed if you went to university. You can only be successful. You can only get well-paying jobs if you had the highest level of education. But I've felt with my work ethic and my principles and my values that there's other pathways in actually achieving that. And so I don't know, I wasn't about proving people wrong, but really proving to myself that I could take a different path. It just meant that I wasn't quite sure what that looked like. Because when you go to university, it's very clear. You go for a certain number of years, you get the degree, you're a graduate, you work your way up.
You come out with a loan.
Come out with a massive loan, and expected to go in at a certain level of the workforce. So I was pretty open to the fact that I was going to have to work hard from the bottom to get to the top. And not that I even thought that I would get to the top, but I thought middle management would be really good. I could work with people. I love working with people, but also have enough influence in an organisation to help its strategic direction or improve its value, or those sorts of things. So I thought I can't do that if I just keep following a typical pathway. So I decided after finishing year 12 that I wanted to go on a student exchange, to go and experience the world, to step outside of the bubble of Australia, Perth school, and just go and learn a different language, a different culture, a different way of living. So I went to Bolivia for a year on exchange. So, not many people speak English there, so I learned Spanish. I did another year 12 level at a Catholic school. So it was really eye-opening. And then I got to travel around Bolivia and hike in the Andes and do things that you think as a 17-year-old you wouldn't get to do. So I felt very lucky in doing that. And when I came back after that, I sort of knew better who I was as opposed to what the pathway was directing me to be. I sort of had a better understanding about what I needed to be. And so I sort of started from there. I used to work at Hungry Jack's. I went back to Hungry Jack's just to start earning money. And I actually tried to get into the Air Force because I decided after living in South America that I wanted to travel. But I didn't weigh enough to actually join the forces because they said I wouldn't get through basic training. So I started as a postie because I used to ride motorcycles. So for 3 years I was a postie, and that all happened because I walked into the post office to get my passport back from the Air Force. It was sent back, and I had my helmet in my hand. And at that time, they were looking for equal opportunity, and they wanted more women posties. And the postmaster said, "Oh, do you ride a bike?" Well, I'm like, "Yes," because I have a helmet. And I said, "Would you like a job?" And that was the Friday, and on Monday I started as a postie. So it was, only by chance. And I think that's been most of my career, is doors have been open for me, or I've stepped through where people have said, "Hey, do you want to give this a go?" And that's led me to, okay, I'll give it a go. And I think not being close to that idea of what that path could look like, being really open to whatever came, is sort of how my whole journey has happened. So I worked for Australia Post for 14 years, from 19, and I worked my way. I was a postie, and then I did extra work and stayed at the office and did the admin work, and then I became the 2IC of a delivery centre. And then I went over to the commercial arm of the business in sales, marketing, product development, when I was then running a government portfolio of accounts. And that's when I sort of came into contact with the state government and did some work for Brendan Grills in Pilbara Cities and did the country age pension fuel card, designed that for them. And then Brendan asked me to go across and be seconded into the state government. So that's when I left federal government, went to the state government, and then had various roles through the state government and ended up in the Department of Housing, managing all the construction projects in the Department of Housing under land and housing construction. So really somebody that has had no experience or educative training in that area. I've just learnt the skill as I've gone. And when people thought, yeah, she could do this, I've allowed myself to step into that space. But I've really loved construction, and I really like property and understanding how things are developed and how our community develops and how, and I ended up managing the policy side of housing and homelessness. Just how a house is just a structure. It's the people that make it a home. And that's what's interesting about homelessness. It's not called houselessness, which is essentially what it is. Someone doesn't have a house. It's actually someone doesn't have a home. And that's, for me, it's that integration of the asset and the commercial side of construction and building community to the social side. What does that actually mean when you become part of something and you feel like this is your space and you feel safe? So I've really enjoyed the mix of both doing the commercial side of construction and my recent role at the CTF in managing workforces for construction and giving people the opportunity to be part of a journey, as well as the social side of what does this actually do to the fabric of our community. So that's
Thank you.
Long answer.
Thank you for sharing the breadth of experiences. I think that intent of what you were talking about, when somebody tapped on your shoulder, said, ask, do you want to give this a go? And then you said, yes, I would, why not? And then that intent of, giving it a shot and giving it a go was very, and then coming with this idea that I want to learn more and I want to learn through doing. And as you get on the job, you do, and then you excel, and then you move on. As a young person, how that mindset came through to you, and how have you picked up that learning skill? Yes, you want to be defiant. That my other siblings are going academics. I don't want to be academics. As a young person, I want to be defiant. But where is that skill of learning through doing came from?
I think I was very lucky. I had a really good relationship with my grandmother, and my family is a long-time Australian family. Like I'm a 7th generation Australian, so came across on the First Fleet, hard yakka sort of, built Australia sort of in the back of Victoria era. So my grandma wasn't a soft, loving type grandma that gave you sweets. She was pretty hard. You did this, you did that, and you worked hard, and so that. But she was also very she instilled in us to ask that question, why. You know, young kids, they go, why is that? Why this? Why that? And it gets annoying. My grandma would always stand up for me and say, no, she's asked the question, why you need to answer. Why is that? And really taught me that value of curiosity. Just keep learning, keep understanding. Don't think you know everything, because you probably don't. So keep challenging yourself, but keep asking the questions. And I think that's where it's come from. Not just agreeing to this is where I have to go, but being curious and going, is there another way? Can I do something differently? Is it possible? And I think not accepting the status quo all the time, but also understand that routine and legacy, tradition, they're all very important parts. So it's not about trying to break the system. It's about being curious and continuing to grow. My mum and my grandma have always got lots of really good sayings. And so my nana used to say, if you stop learning, you're dead. Because there's always something that you don't know. So, yeah. And I think that's keeping your arrogance in check and your ego in check.
Very much. And from a work environment, you worked in state government and then the Construction Training Fund, CTF. So there are two different environments to play in. So when you work on a policy space and in the construction side, what are the key insights you were observing? What was happening in that space? And then if you can share a bit more on that side.
Yeah, I think interesting thing about construction, it's one of the oldest careers, obviously, because we've been building for a very long time. But it hasn't moved at the same pace as other industries have in their adaptation to research and development. We've kept building the same way for so long with the same type of people doing the same type of work. And it's fascinating that we've not really seen a shift in that. And then when we come under stress in an industry like construction that we have recently, where we don't have enough workers, we're building, out of the same materials that we can't get access to anymore because of COVID or wars, then we're all like, oh, now we're in a housing crisis.
Or a supply chain.
Or a supply chain crisis, or a workforce crisis, where it was probably really evident a long time ago that over 100 years we've not shifted. So therefore, why would productivity in this industry shift? And one of the biggest things for me, and I guess challenging the status quo of females in construction, was if you don't have a diverse construction workforce in its totality, both blue collar, white collar, grey collar, then you're not going to change. That's why it's still doing exactly what it's doing, and you can't expect it to do different unless that changes, that element changes, and that we are more curious about, can we build differently? Can we use different workforces? Can we use different automation? So I think it's really exciting because it's a real step change now, because we're actually going to challenge the way that we've always built. And Perth in particular is fascinating, right? Because we love brick here. Like, everything's built from brick, and if you're not building from brick, it's not good enough, which is not really the case, because lots of different states and different countries build out of lots of different materials that aren't brick. We're the only ones that seem absolutely fascinated by the material. And so it's very constraining. So it's about, how do we challenge that status quo? Not that we shouldn't use brick. I think brick's a very good product, and we have really good bricklayers here. But there are probably other ways that we can do it that then opens the industry up to a different type of workforce, including women. And so that sort of drove my passion in. I love building a community, and I hate to see the community stressed by not getting housing supply and the homelessness issue. And I could just see that getting worse. So I was like, how can I have an impact into this and in the construction industry, understanding all the commercial realities of that? Because whenever you shift into R&D, it's going to cost you more. The more policies you put in place, it'll cost you more. So how do you still make it efficient and affordable, but get a change in that environment? So.
And what do you see as a long-term in the last decade or so? One is the supply side of not just supply chain, but workforce and land also come into play. So how do you see the supply side keeping up with the demand side of building new houses? Because in a way, there's a good equation to be matched between supply and demand.
Yeah, well, I guess when you constrain supply by COVID, where we locked our borders, and then suddenly the floodgates open, you do get flooded. And there isn't the efficiency in the system to keep up with that level of demand. And that hasn't stopped because the resource sector is constantly increasing their demand as well. And where previously in our last housing boom, the resource sector could use the 457 visa system that we had in place. Well, that's been abolished, and there's the 482 visa, which is very different. And so where the resource sector would pull their workforce from has shifted to be a more local workforce. And so that means there's less people doing the construction work. So, and we're moving from building 13,000 homes a year up to trying to get to 23,000 homes a year. So you're almost trying to double the amount of output with less of a workforce, or not the growth in a workforce at the same time. And so they're never going to meet in that way unless either we change the way we build, change who builds, and change the type of building. So going from our 4x2 typical house into being more accepting of apartments and townhouses and multi-storey, where you can build more on a single space than trying to get land supply. And we're always going to be constrained by land supply. So,
and hence the city becomes bigger.
Like this, and harder to service.
Yeah.
Because not only then do you build all those houses, you've got all the civic infrastructure you need, libraries, hospitals, railway, roads, if you keep building out that way. And then by having to build all of that, you're taking away the workforce on it. When you probably have capacity within the community we already have. I, though, think it just needs to be done appropriately and worked well with the community to make sure it fits for everyone. And you can't get affordability unless you start doing higher density because you need housing choice.
And in terms of the supply chain only, the material which you have to bring into Australia to build these houses, what are the critical materials which we don't have and which we always... If the supply is turned off, everything stops. And why can't we have our sovereign capacity or capability in the country to build those? Yes, there are private enterprise who are creating that material. So what does that equation look like?
So I think,
on materials.
Yeah, I think one of the key ones that we saw through COVID when we couldn't get containers in was glass. So we don't manufacture glass at all. We bring glass in from all over the place. Now, when we build big glass buildings like we have in the CBD, so everything that's gone up in Elizabeth Quay, all those buildings are surrounded by glass.
You're right.
So, I think I don't know the number, it was a lot of sea containers of glass would come into the state each week. It dropped to about a third of that volume. So just that product alone, where you think, well, we use a lot of glass, why don't we produce glass? It's actually very expensive to make glass. And so it's actually more efficient and affordable for us to bring those products in because our manufacturing capability has changed over time because the efficiency that we can get it from other countries and bring it into the state. Do you think that'll change? I don't think so. I think, though, what we would probably look to, and the government is more modular construction. So instead of getting all of the bits and pieces, taking them to a site and building the home in situ, it's more about building it in a factory where all those bits and pieces are and then bringing that to site and more modular style construction, which is more efficient. The good thing about modular as well is if you're building it in a factory place, that's better for a workforce because they're going to one place all the time to work rather than going, I'm at this house this week, that house this week, that place this week. And particularly for our apprentices, that's very difficult because if they don't have a licence, it's very hard to get to work. So I think by more modular construction, one, it's efficient, but two, it really does help with the workforce capability and it sort of, you can manufacture differently. So, and I think we're getting there. It's probably just not fast enough.
And then you gave the number of 13,000 houses to 22,000 houses to be produced in the state of WA. So the system has a capacity to build in terms of the workforce we have. If we build more efficiently, what's the upper cap, how much high we can go with the current capacity we have in the state?
Oh, that's hard to tell because it depends on where you're building it and what you're building it from. So if we did more modular, we would need more factory style capacity. That's very expensive to set up and you need scale. So for a modular constructor to come in and do 1,000 homes a year. It's a massive investment, and they need to know that they can actually land 1,000 homes, like someone's going to buy those homes. So I think that's the work that's underway. Where will that get us to? So the peak before was about 33,000 we were building in 2015. We could probably get 25,000 homes a year would be start heading towards what our targets are looking like. I just think we need to shift from building the 4x2 in the outer suburbs to really finding the economies of scale of doing more higher density developments within the city surrounds, which means a different type of builder. So then you say, well, what's the capacity of that builder? Well, because they're not here, we don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, but so when you move the mindset shift of moving from 4x2s to more of townhouses or apartment living or more denser houses. So how do you? So that's a different conversation to be had.
Yes.
On mindset.
It is, and it's a community conversation.
Yeah.
Because Perth has been built in a spread, like as far as we can go. And,
Yeah.
and I guess the perception is we've got land, why everybody should get a piece of land. But it's not viable anymore. And with the cost of living pressures, transport costs, all those sorts of things, the equation is starting to shift from somebody's home budget. Like what makes the most sense to me? And as long as there's enough community infrastructure in parks and schools and, other amenity, we don't all need to have big backyards. And we know all through Europe and other countries that people live quite happily in smaller accommodation, but we're just so used to having all this space. So it takes time, it's a shift, but also you've got to have the right product available. And I think that's what the market is trying to produce, is a different style of product. Because you look at sort of Wembley, Floria area and some of those, or even Maylands, just those cream flats, right?
Yeah.
They look boring and old and people think that's what an apartment is. But there's lots of really great developments that are happening now that have really good community infrastructure, really well-designed apartments. They're really affordable to live in because it's not just the cost of buying that home, it's the cost of living in that home.
Yeah.
And I think if we can better articulate that, because power costs are really hard for people, transport costs are really hard for people, everything seems to be going up. So it's just one way we can address it. But it still needs to be fit for purpose for people. We also have an ageing demographic. And so we've got a lot of older people living in really big homes that don't have a lot of choice to move out. And so they're kind of locking up that housing supply. So we probably have about 200,000 empty bedrooms in WA.
And how many homeless people?
I don't know what the number is now, but
Probably
it's less than that.
Yeah.
But who?
I understand.
It's that paradigm shift, right?
Yeah.
Because everyone's got that spare bedroom.
Yeah. And from, again, that mindset shift of, are there any model cities or towns to be built? Because they always talk about having, hub and spoke model, have different small, redo Bunbury, have small towns and, rather than one big town and concentrate everything and distribute the townships across.
Yeah.
How is that model functional and workable from a capacity and civic amenities and all of that point of view?
Yeah, so you still need economies of scale, but it doesn't need to be super cities. So there's been a lot of work done by Audric who've done studies around, should Australia just be around the edges of Australia? Should we try and centralise like America? Should we have main cities and then these super towns, if you like, all around it? So they've really done some research in that and about what the preference model is by citizens plus the academics, what they say would be the best way forward. And it really does show that super cities itself, just having main cities, will only get you so far, and that you do need to have these major regional centres. Yeah. So your Bunburys and your Geraldtons and your Albanys, they're really, really important. Spreading past that, then you don't get those economies of scale, and it's very hard to ensure that all the right infrastructure is there. And you hear it quite a bit about people that live in the regions don't have access to medical or things like that, and that's why those towns are so important. And as we age, we need more of those services. So,
and to achieve the economies of scale, you need to create enough incentive to create the demand side, and if people, so there has to be incentive to move to tier 2 or super cities or towns. So how is that public policy faring in that space?
I don't know because I haven't been involved in it, but Brendan came out with the super towns policy, which is about putting in more infrastructure in regional towns, and I think that's been really good. But you also have to have the base economy in that town. So what are people doing? Where are they working? And that's changed over time. You think about Collie and the decommissioning of the power station. Well, that was its key economy.
Yes.
So then you have to do the Collie plan and go, okay, so what are we doing with Collie now? And what are people going to do and where are they going to work? And so it really needs to be thought very carefully. And each town is so different from each other. So you can't compare, Broome to Albany.
Yeah.
They're just very, very different and different demographics. So I don't think one policy covers it all. But I think COVID certainly showed that because we can work more from home and our capacity to be able to do things on Teams and Skypes or through that way, people have moved to the regions thinking, I want a better lifestyle. I don't want to sit in traffic for an hour.
Yeah.
And I can. And so that's sort of boosted the population base in some of those regional towns. And certainly Southwest has grown significantly. And I think also opening the Busselton Airport for more flights north and east has really helped the Southwest grow and a different lifestyle. So.
And how do you see the next phase of the construction boom will be led by? So what are the key indicators you would see or telltale signs that there'll be another construction boom happening or not happening?
So definitely demand, which you picked up on before, and that drives supply, and supply is that construction. Major economic investment. So AUKUS is a really interesting one, and what that will do around Henderson, Kwinana, Rockingham. That will have a massive impact because it's not just the construction workforce that you're catering for, it's the long-term operational workforce. Similarly, the minerals market where we're going with iron ore, lithium, we're opening up more rare earth mines. So we've really diversified sort of our mining. We were typically iron ore. Now we've got lots of other minerals, lithium and others that we're now mining. And we're not just mining in the Pilbara, we're mining in all these different regions. And so more housing supply is required, so therefore more construction, population diversity. So they're the things that I would look to as to the indicators of where we're going to continue to see investment in construction. But also, what's the latent demand that we're dealing with because we haven't been able to keep pace in certain things. And so there's a catch-up piece of construction and then there's the future investment piece of construction and what that looks like. But also, we touched on earlier off camera about evolution and devolution and there's also with the changing views around environmental impacts and sustainability, we don't build the same way, but we don't deconstruct the same way. We used to just bowl something over, dig a hole and bury it. Now we literally take things apart brick by brick. We decommission them. And the decommissioning investment in WA is just expected to grow massively. So we've got to decommission massive oil rigs. We've got to decommission, like we did Princess Margaret Hospital. Like you've got to bring that down and you've got to do it sustainably. Yeah. So there's a whole different aspect in construction that's actually deconstruction that we've got to think about as well as the construction piece.
And one of the part of the equation on construction is the workforce, which you dealt with. And how do you see this the supply side of the construction? What are the gaps you're observing, and then where are we failing in which parts of the construction space?
Yeah, so because it's a trade as old as time, essentially, it's not as always as attractive as probably it used to be, and also the perception of construction versus an academic career is seen as sometimes being like the poor cousin. But what's changing in that is AI. So AI is taking some of these or shifting some of these other roles that are more seen to be academic. AI can't put bricks on top of each other.
No.
They can't dig a hole. They can't. So it's sort of shifting that whole manual workforce into a different level, but also the use of technology in those roles is very different. So you've got to have good data knowledge. You have to be able to use digital technology. And so that requirement's lifting it from a very, what was seen basic role to something quite sophisticated. So that's kind of exciting. if you think about what's my career choice, and I want to get into something that it's changing very quickly, is getting more environmentally sustainable, is really digitally advancing, and then I can actually build something and I can look back at it and go, I did that, which is hard to do in other careers. That's exciting. And so I think the shift is really getting people excited about the construction industry and what you can be part of. One of the biggest barriers, though, for the industry has been its culture. So it's sort of it's improving a lot, and I think we're getting there. But generally, the culture hasn't been fantastic, and so it's not always a safe environment to be in, either physically or psychologically. And so we really need to work on that and improve that psychosocial safety on sites, so that more people feel safe to go and be there as part of the workforce. And that will attract more people. Yeah.
And how do you, when you say psychological safety, the culture has to be improved? What are the telltale signs it's not functioning or it's not working? Or are there any surveys done to indicate that the culture is not good?
Yeah, so we did a psychosocial roadshow across the state with 13 events and asked those questions. One, do you know what psychosocial safety is? And explained it. And then once you know that, you know, what all the elements of psychosocial safety is, where do you feel that the industry is at? And then how well do you think the industry is at responding? Sadly, the results weren't great. They're basically, you know, bullying, racism, female sexual harassment, those sorts of things seem to come up quite a lot. And they weren't really surprising. So it's how do we address that on a site-by-site basis? So in large construction projects, you have toolbox talks and you can say to everybody on this project, these are behaviours we expect on site. Residential projects, there's 5 different businesses all turning up doing work on a house. No one controls anyone else. You're all separate businesses.
Yeah.
So therefore no one is, there's no HR department, there's no risk department that's managing that. And so it's very hard then to manage those behaviours and change those behaviours, because a lot of people don't realise that how they've always behaved is not how you can behave now, because that's how they grew up or that's how they were taught. So there's a bit of work to do in that space.
And it's very voluntary to be trained to be, you know, learning these skills as well, because, you know, trades role is a very hard role in terms of what you're doing, but probably not very soft role in terms of the intercommunication skills or things you might say and for fun of it or whatnot. It might be seen differently with different people. So I don't know what kind of a blanket training one could do, or what kind of blanket brush or what kind of silver bullets you might use to solve that problem.
I don't think there is one. And I think that's what we've been working on. And, you know, some people said to me, oh, Tiff, you know, some of these behaviours will die out as the older generation retire from the workforce. And the older generation are teaching the new generation. So there's this transference of poor behaviours, if you like, because the younger people want to fit in. And so they behave the way the older people are, and then that ingrains that behaviour. Or if you get more females on a work site, that changes everything. But the more, then you're putting females in a situation that's not very good behaviours, and they leave and they tell other females, don't go into construction because I was bullied and harassed and told that you're not strong enough for this job, and all those sorts of things. So, you know, like it's a bit chicken and egg. So how do you change the behaviour without changing the workforce, and how do you change the workforce without changing behaviour? And I think it's just going to take time, and we need to keep having the conversation. But construction is not much different to some of the other sectors that we hear about bullying and intimidation. You know, chefs, you hear about it quite a bit. Retail, you can hear about it. Lawyers, you know, that it's a whole societal issue, and we just need to improve the way we treat each other.
In terms of, you know, you were talking about diversity initially, and just specifically from a gender diversity, as you wanted to have more females as workforce. What do you have some numbers on percentage shifts? How have you seen the numbers changing?
Yeah, so in particular trades we have. So painting and decorating was about 7% female participation. It's now 22%, which is really good. And most of the trades are slowly going up, electrical, carpentry, those sorts of things, but not at a pace that is a massive step change. It's incremental. It's glacial. It feels for me glacial. Can we not hurry up now? But at least it's an improvement in the total numbers. But women only make up 3.5% of the trades base. So 96.5% are male. So you imagine that environment.
Yeah.
Yeah. And even in all of the other roles, it's about 16% are female. So your supervisors, your managers, and most of that is in administration roles. So, but we're seeing more going into the more supervisory roles, which is fantastic. But 16% is not a lot. And I often got, compared to health, Tiff, there's so many women in health. Men must be a very small percentage in health. Men make up about 23% in health. So it's still a much higher number in the reverse, gender split type sectors. So there's a lot of work to do in construction to attract women, but also to maintain women in the workforce, that they don't get bullied out. Or it doesn't become so hard, I'm just sick of dealing with this and I'm going to go do something else. So there's lots of really great success stories, but there's also a lot of women that haven't had good journeys in their time.
So is it happens that somebody joins in and then just drops off after 3 or 5 years? Is there a sweet spot there when somebody drops off, or is there a trend like that, or
not really.
people stick around for longer if they're in trades?
It really depends on where they're working, what they're working on, what their job is, those sorts of things. So, I guess electrical, you see women stick around a little bit more, but it seemed to be the sexiest of the trades. It's harder to, you've got to go through a capstone to get your electrical license or become an electrician. It seemed to be the elite. You get paid a lot more. So there's a different level of respect to maybe some of the other trades where it's not seen to be in that way. And we don't regulate our trades as much as what other states do. And so you don't need a trade certificate to be a tiler or a brickmaker. You can go and do those roles. You can learn on the job, which is great, because that's a lot of our workforce have done that. But they're therefore not gone through a system of learning. They've learnt from whoever has taught them and whatever behaviours they've had, or their view on safety, or those sorts of things. And then, we do see a lot of people get hurt in construction, and that's the other thing. As a parent, do I want my child to be in this industry? They're going to get bullied, or they're going to get hurt. So that's the other. We've really got to create that really safe space, and also an aspiration of what my career could look like. Because a lot of kids go, well, I don't want to be a bricklayer for life. And you say, no, this is part of the journey. This is your pathway. This is where you can own your own business and build your own houses and things like that. So it's really articulating that whole journey. But the whole industry needs to shift.
And is the industry wanting, in terms of changes from 3.5% to 23% or 50%? Is the industry wanting to have that, or is it yes, we're having that subtle conversations at some of the occasions, at some of the times, not all the time, every time. It is not strategic, it is more of tactical response to few things, reactionary response to things happening at some workplaces.
Yeah, so I think there's definitely, from the government's perspective, a real policy shift and movement to ensure that government projects have apprenticeships, have female participation, have Aboriginal employment, that we're buying local. Like, there's a lot that they wrap around to ensure that we're getting the best that we can out of government spend to move this dial. And in some ways that's really working really well. And that then goes on to the contractor, and what we expect is that contractor passes that down. But our industry is so subcontracted down. So 65% of the construction businesses in WA are sole traders. They don't employ. That's a large proportion if you think about it. They don't have HR policies. They don't have a book, like they're just one-man bands essentially. So it's really hard to get down to that level and say, okay, these are our expectations, and how do you actually make it flow through, versus a resource sector, like a Rio Tinto or BHP that says, right, we're setting this target of about 30% female workforce, and therefore all of their HR and their recruitment is all based on that policy. Very hard to do in construction, because when we're short of people, you're just trying to get anyone. I just need an electrician. And the government's going, no, it must be a female. You're like, oh, there you go, I'm just trying to get this thing built. So, you know, we're up against that. But I think overall, those things coming together, changing the culture in the industry, making it safer, putting in the policies, changing the mindset of large contractors, to show the commercial benefits, the business benefits of doing that. I think we're getting there. So, and the National Association of Women in Construction, NAWIC, have set a percentage around 25% is their target of female participation.
So, what kind of conversation to be had if you want to increase that number at a school level, or the whole narrative? Is it because you need more workforce, whether it's a boy or a girl? You need more workforce because you have more demand side of it, and you have to deliver more construction houses, and you want to grow the sector as well. So, what kind of conversations to be had in terms of better telling the story, the narrative, at a younger age, at a school level? So, is there work happening on that side?
Yeah, absolutely. So the CTF, the Construction Training Fund, has a Construction Future Centre that's out the bay, and about 4,500 students come through a year, just opening their minds up to what are the jobs in construction. Because I think sometimes when you say the word construction, people think hammer or brick or, you know, very rudimentary. But there's so many jobs that are really cool that people can get involved in. And I think it's starting to paint that picture really early about what you could be part of, you know, driving big yellow machines, or, you know, doing the lights on Optus Stadium, you know, that sort of projects that you can be involved in. And it's pretty exciting stuff. So it's about sharing that message. But, you know, it's tough for schools and school career advisors because there's so many jobs out there at the moment available. Defence, police, agriculture, transport, retail, tourism. You know, they're trying to open the world to the children on all these things. Construction's just one of those. So how do we get that in the front? I think it's those early conversations. It's linking construction to STEM and understanding how that has a connection to it. So that's more the academic mindset, like engineering, you know. And it's actually really good to have someone that's done a trade and a degree because they understand both parts of how the things are put together and what makes it work. And starting as young as we can, so probably year 6, year 7, having those conversations when they're still full of imagination, haven't quite worked out where they're going yet, maybe still playing Minecraft, which is a really great way. Like, they're already building cities. So we don't have swords, but we still build cities, you know, and using that creative mindset. Because at some point, I don't know where, we stop playing with blocks and Lego. Like we naturally like to build things when we play. Yeah. So where does that go, and how do we keep that excitement and imagination going to not just building out of Lego, but building out of real materials and leaving a legacy behind us?
In terms of your, because you have been across your career in different rooms where you were a minority of some kind, and then you're trying to, you know, have a conversation and push through an idea. And how do you, in difficult rooms, how do you manage conflict management? How do you manage communicating with a larger room? So what are those skills you have learned by doing? And I'm sure, you know, things would have not gone, you know, not all the time. So as things happen, so how you learn those skills through the career?
I think before, when I was younger, and I think this just comes from your eagerness when you're young and lack of experience, you'd want to talk first. You wanted to prove who you were.
Be the first one, raise a hand.
Raise a hand and do this thing first, or talk first, because you thought you had to prove yourself. And I think over time what I learned is best to sit and listen for as long as you can. Ask the questions. And when you're ready to say something, ask another question before you do. Like, to really understand who's in the room, where they're coming from in their views and opinions or agenda, and like analyse it before you start putting a voice in the room, and pitching what you want to say more as a question than as an opinion. And I found that's really helped. And not being afraid to ask the hard questions, not letting things go in a room. Like when you see something quite uncomfortable, calling it out and going, oh, you don't seem to really like that idea. Can you unpack that for me? What's what's bothering you about that, rather than going, oh, they didn't like that, I'm just going to shift my position. And I have learnt over time to call out bad behaviour because I truly believe the behaviour you walk past is the behaviour you accept. And if we're going to change general behaviour anywhere, we've got to be able to do it respectfully and call it out and say, well, it's not okay. You can't say, what you're saying has an impact on this person in a negative way. And opening their mind to that, not accusatory, but really saying that's not okay. Also, I learnt positioning, so where I sit in a room when I know what type of meeting I'm having. And that's been a major shift.
Okay. As in positioning in terms of the physical location of where you're sitting? Can you give an example?
So if it's a situation where we're in a joint negotiation, I won't ever sit at the head of the table. Even if I'm the head of the conversation or I'm chairing, I'll sit in the middle of the table, like if it's a boardroom table. But if it's something that I need to get across and this is what we're doing, then I'll sit at the head of the table. And I'll make sure that everyone can see clearly my intent, my direction, on where we're going.
And then do you have to sit and observe and be the last one to speak, and then, then where do you sit in that scenario?
I'll sit on the edges. Yeah. And I think too, if you know what the personalities are that are going into the room, and you can generally tell, some of the body language or how they dress or what they first say when they come into the room, like if they talk about the kids or they talk about the weather or they talk about, something that's external to work versus someone that's like I'm in back-to-back meetings, I'm very busy, so where's the agenda? Then you know how to hold that conversation very differently to someone that's maybe a bit more relaxed and wants to add more social sense to a conversation and then still get yourself through, because they're the ones generally feeling a little more uncomfortable, and it's about getting that person to a comfortable state that you can get them to open up to you. Or.
And how do you negotiate with the hard nut, as in somebody who's very much not giving anything out and very much poker face?
Yeah, I don't think any of that is very easy. A lot of the time is listening and validating. So what I hear you said was blah, blah, blah. I'll give you 3 points, this and this. So just really sharp with them, because they don't want fluff. They've got a target that they're trying to reach, but very, very clear when that is not acceptable, that I can't meet that. And being okay with that, not letting them overpower you in that situation. Keeping it, always thinking about it being fair and even. And
in terms of communicating with larger audience, as you might do keynotes and panel discussions, when the rooms are larger, how does the communication style changes? Because you're trying to deliver a message, and then how do you make sure that the message lands appropriately and perfectly well?
It's always different because you don't always know who your audience is, and everyone's brought something different to that room when they've walked in. They've either struggled getting their kid to school, or their parents unwell and they're thinking about how do I get them to hospital, or they're in hospital. So everyone's got something else going on for them. So not trying to think like I need to convince you, but I need to engage you. So I try and be as engaging as I can. Sometimes a bit of humour, but also authenticity. And people will open up a bit more when you're really authentic and say, this is where I screwed up, this is where, I've had, like it's being really open. And many times when I've been on panels, I've probably overshared, but that really builds a rapport. Like I don't know these people, they don't know me. So you're trying to build a rapport very quickly. So just be real and just, sometimes say silly things, because and particularly in forums with a lot of women, it can be so intimidating, the world. And if you're in a male-dominated industry, so you kind of just need to relax. And that's what I want for people, is just relax and let's have a chat. Although it feels very one way because I'm doing the talking, but I want them to feel like, oh, that's someone I can relate to. So talking about motherhood, or talking about trying to get your kids to sport, and you've got puke coming down here, or you've got dribble on this shoulder, or you've got somebody's dirty hand marks on your pants, and you're in a meeting trying to wipe off, you've just realised that all of this food is still on you, and those things happen. It doesn't matter how high in your career, you go. Those things happen. So being real about it is.
And because you use the word motherhood, and then you talked off camera, you were talking about your grandkids, and playing the grandmother role. So how is the work mother and being a grandmother fits in the whole story?
Yeah, it's interesting, and I think it's a journey because there's no book on it. And certainly at a CEO level, it's all. I was actually talking to my daughter about this yesterday. She said, "You're almost intimidating, Mum, but not to me."
Almost.
Like she said, but I understand why other people are intimidated by you. And I went, "You're intimidated by me." She goes, "Well, yeah, because you're smart, you're articulate, and you say what you want to say." So that's really interesting and I said to her, "Do I intimidate you?" And she said, "Oh no, you're just Mum." And so I think it's just be Mum. Like, I'm not a superwoman. I don't wear a cape or don't have a weird whip or anything like that. I'm just a person doing a job like anybody else. It just might be at a different level. And ultimately to my grandkids, I'm just grandma. I'm Nana. They don't know anything else. And so I just be Nana where I can and just enjoy those moments and not overthink them. And I think we're very good at overthinking things and we try and be perfectionists and that nothing wrong here, we're all good, nothing to see.
It's perfect.
Everything's perfect. And actually things do go wrong and I get sad and I cry and I get grumpy and it's interesting actually this time of life too, talking about perimenopause and menopause with women and what a shift it is in your mindset in your career.
Yeah.
And how, you try and get through the day without stabbing anyone. Because you're just like, your emotions are all like, and then sometimes, and so I guess sometimes when I spend time with my grandkids, it fills my cup and it takes a lot of that. I just go, oh, that stuff doesn't matter. But, you worry, it doesn't matter how old your kids get, you worry about them just the same. And particularly when they've got their own kids, are they doing okay? Are the grandkids okay? And it never leaves you. So you work through it. But I feel very blessed to have them.
In conclusion, if you can just tell me if you can share what's the best piece of advice you have received and the worst piece of advice also you have received.
Okay, so I'll start with the worst. So when I got to director level in government and fellow directors, they were talking about where I was going to go next or what I was going to do. I was told that I wouldn't make a CEO because I don't have an MBA. So this will be as all you'll ever get is here because CEOs must have an MBA. And I was contemplating, do I go and do one just so I can tick this box? And I've proved that I didn't need to. But it set a imposter syndrome mentality and a barrier that I didn't need because it wasn't real. So that wasn't really helpful. But probably the best advice. I think there's a couple. My mum used to say, if you're not living on the edge, you're taking up too much space. And it's very much about your comfort zone. And as we get older, we really love our comfort zone and we kind of know who we are and we don't want to push outside of that. The more you're in your comfort zone, the smaller your zone gets. So the more you can live on the edge and start testing things and being a little bit uncomfortable, the better off you are. So, basically it was my mum saying, just stay on the edge, keep challenging yourself, keep being part of something, be in that zone, but live on the edge a little bit. So that's been helpful because whenever I start feeling too comfortable, I go, hang on a minute, I need to do something because I'm starting to get comfortable. And then I don't want my world to shrink. I want my world to keep expanding. And she would also say, you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So if you constantly spend time with people that look like you, sound like you, do what you do, think like you, that's all you'll ever have. So the more that you spread that, bringing different people into your life, being, and I love mentoring people because I get to learn about all these other people and I find it so joyful, really challenging that. And so I do sometimes look at my circle of friends or think, am I now in groupthink? and what am I doing differently to get some different thoughts and ideas in. Yeah.
Thank you, Tiffany. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Hope that's been helpful.
Yeah, it's good.